So it's been a while since I followed comic book related media, and basically nothing has changed, so no surprise there. But hey, I'm cool with it. I'm happy I don't really engage with that shit anymore. And honestly, just looking forward to it finally collapsing.
I will live to piss on his grave.
But with the recent release of the Joker 2 trailer, I think it's an appropriate time to make this video, since it's a topic I've been wanting to cover for a while. Really, I want to just go over my grievances with comic book movies, and the issues I have with the medium as a whole, I guess, and just kind of explain the main reason why I stopped caring about them. I'm not going to waste any time and just get right into it.
The fuck are you doing? Not the kid.
To put it bluntly, most of these movies and projects are creatively bankrupt. The studios putting out these projects really stopped caring a long time ago, because they realized they didn't really have to try. Well, at least that was the case for a while. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But these movies and shows have been dropping in quality for years, and just so many of them just lack any style, flair, or even creativity. They seem to rely on the same banter, humor, quips, and jokes they've been doing for the last decade. A writing style that has gotten old because not only did the DCU start doing it, but so did many other movies that aren't even comic book related. So much of Hollywood has adopted this style that it's just exhausting to listen to. The tension and seriousness is just sucked out whenever these characters start cracking lame jokes. In a video I did recently about John Wick and the Equalizer, I mentioned this very same fact there. And basically because of Marvel's success at being these PG-13 action comedies, a lot of action films just kind of shifted to that. So it didn't just affect comic book movies, it affected every other genre as well. That's why for quite a while there weren't that many R-rated action films or R-rated raunchy comedies. Now it's not just because of the MCU, but it definitely accelerated the process, and other studios saw the success of the Marvel formula that's been called now, and decided to put out projects that were similar, even if they weren't comic book films. But anyway, getting back on topic, besides the lackluster writing, so many of these comic book movies just lack any signature style or flair to make them stand out. They all just blend together. I will give DC some credit, because at least many other movies visually look different from each other, or at least they're more creative, though a lot of the writing style is exactly the same. But the MCU and whatever the hell you want to call the Sony Venom universe have definitely been putting out some of the blandest comic book movies in recent years. Some go past boring and bad and just nosedive into insulting. Now of course I will say there are exceptions, and when they pop up people seem to really enjoy them, and they do pretty well. Joker and the Batman come to mind immediately. Not only were they well received with the review scores, but they had some really good box office pull as well. I mean hell, the Joker broke $1 billion. And they left audiences talking long after the movies were over. Now, not every movie needs to be the Batman or Joker. They don't have to be that vastly different from their peers. They can still function within the confines of an MCU or DC bubble, but at least give it some damn style, some creativity, something to help it stand out. And there are already examples like this. I mean, you got James Gunn's comic book movies. Look at his Guardian films. They all fit within the MCU bubble very well, but they have enough style all its own that at least stands out from the rest of them. Hell, same goes for Doctor Strange too. Sam Raimi really made the most visually interesting and creative Phase 4 MCU movie hands down. And though he probably couldn't go as far as he wanted to, I still think he did a good job operating within that bubble. Now there are a few others that tried something a little bit different or experimented a little bit. Shang-Chi, for example. They wanted to put a bigger focus on fight scenes because, let's be honest, a lot of MCU action is pretty stale, so they had a way more creative hand-to-hand combat and action sequences, as well as having just one of the best MCU villains. There are some issues with the movie, but I think it did a pretty decent job operating within that bubble. And I'm gonna give props to Werewolf by Night. It's shot in black and white and switches the aspect ratio to 4:3, as well as adding some film grain to resemble older classic monster movies. It's not a bad little special, and I do tip my hat to them for trying something different. But every time they do experiment a little bit like this, they usually have to reel it back in. Like Shang-Chi. Yeah, the action is better, but the lame quips and banter is still there. And it's a bit frustrating because you think this will be the one that changes things up. But once they start branching out and being a little bit creative, the movie then feels like it's being forced back into a more familiar MCU territory. So I guess it's kind of like a one step forward, two step back kind of thing. It's a shame you gotta look outside Marvel and DC to find something that's more creative and fun. That's one of the reasons why I like Snyder so much. The guy brought some serious style, flair, and creativity to these movies. How you feel about the final product is up to you, but the guy at least put forth some really good efforts. And this goes for his other comic book movies too, like Watchmen and 300 especially, which are still some top tier comic book films right there. So what I want to do now is showcase a bunch of movies that have been out for a while that you may not know are technically comic book movies. I'll talk about them briefly to give you an idea of what they're about, and hopefully they pique your interest so you can go check them out. This section might be a little long, so I'll give you a timestamp that you can skip to if you just want to see the final section of the video. But I probably won't have another chance to talk about these movies, so I figured hell, let's just do it now. And maybe I can put some of you younger kids out there onto some heat. Alright, let's get into it.
Funny movie if you're a sick bastard like I am.
And so these are in like no particular order. I just kind of want to rattle off a bunch of them and just give you a basic idea of what they're about. First up is The Road to Perdition. This came out in 2002 and stars Tom Hanks and is directed by the always great Sam Mendes. It takes place in the 1930s and Tom Hanks plays Mike Sullivan, an enforcer for a local mobster. But the mobster's son, named Connor, played by Daniel Craig, is really jealous of the bond they share. But then one night, Mike's oldest son witnesses a hit that Connor performs, and so Connor uses the opportunity to try to kill Mike and his whole family. But Mike and his older son survive. Now they're on the run, and thus thus begins the journey of survival and revenge. This movie is fantastic, there's just no other way to put it. Every performance is great, it's beautifully shot, and the story, although very simple, really keeps you engaged. And just a bond between Mike and his son is definitely a highlight and makes you want to just see where the story goes. By the way, his son is played by Tyler Hoechlin, the guy who ended up playing Superman in Superman and Lois. So it's kind of like a fun fact for you. Honestly, less said about this movie, the best, because I want you to experience it. Yeah, so Road to Perdition, check it out. Next is Edge of Tomorrow. Released in 2014, it's a sci-fi film that stars Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, and Bill Paxton, and directed by Doug Liman. Basically, humanity is getting invaded by these aliens, and they're kind of losing the war. And Tom Cruise, who isn't really a soldier, is forced on the combat field, where he then gains the ability to relive the same day over and over again after he dies. But then he teams up with Emily Blunt, and with his new ability, they try to find a way to actually put an end to the alien threat. This movie is extremely fun. It has a very interesting concept, and on top of that, the action is pretty damn rad. And the best part of the movie is just watching Tom Cruise just get more and more efficient at killing all these aliens. And there's even a romance between him and Emily Blunt that doesn't feel forced. All around, it's just a really fun, put together sci-fi movie. Got an interesting concept, got some badass action, and you got Tom Cruise just throwing his body around to do his own stunts. What more can you ask for, really? Next, we got Dredd, released back in 2012. Dredd takes place in a futuristic dystopian future where society is just at an all-time low, population is at an all-time high, as well as crime. And so you basically have these super police called judges, and that's who we follow. We follow Judge Dredd, along with a trainee who has a psychic ability. And while just going on a routine visit, Dredd and his new trainee find themselves locked in this giant apartment complex where they must fight their way to the top to take out the big boss. Honestly, this movie is just super ultra violent with a lot of slow-mo, but it also introduces you to a very interesting world. It does a great job at showcasing this big dystopian future with these mega cities and mega apartment complexes. And then you have some crazy, bloody, over-the-top violence. Honestly, this shit's a blast. It stars Carl Urban as Judge Dredd, and man, this guy just fucking nails this role. He's actually been open about wanting to come back for a sequel for some time now. Yeah, so Dredd, definitely check it out. Next is Wanted, released back in 2008 and based on the graphic novel by Mark Miller. It stars James McAvoy as Wesley, a nobody office worker who discovers he's the son of a professional assassin and also shares his superhuman killing abilities. And so he's approached by Angelina Jolie's character, where he embarks on a journey to figure out who killed his dad and why, as well as finding out about this underground world of assassins. The best way to describe this movie is like batshit insane. It's bloody, violent, and at times it's really hilarious. It's one of those movies where so many things are like really far-fetched, but you kind of get into it for those very same reasons. But overall, the movie is just a blast. And keeping in the theme of Mark Miller graphic novels, we have Kingsman, released in 2014 and directed by Matthew Vaughn. It follows the story of Eggsy, a streetwise kid who gets recruited by a spy organization's training program. And while he's learning the ropes and getting mentored by Colin Firth's character, an evil tech billionaire is scheming in the background, played by Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah, this movie is a throwback to the classic James Bond spy films, just embracing every single trope of the genre. And the whole movie is filled with so much humor and creative action sequences. There's also 2 more films that were released, but the first one's definitely the best. But I think all 3 of them are worth checking out. Next we got Red. Bruce Willis plays a retired Black Op agent who discovers that he is now the target of a hit, and so he has to get the band back together of other retired badasses and figure out who wants them dead and why, and then take them out first. What follows is uncovering some government secrets, a little espionage, as well as watching some retired badasses putting the work in. Overall, it's a very solid action flick that's a lot of fun. And there was actually a sequel made back in 2013, which was also pretty solid. It's really more of just the first film, with more people coming after them again. So yeah, Red 1 and 2, not bad. And to round this list off, I'm gonna go ahead and mention A History of Violence. So Viggo Mortensen plays a mild-mannered local diner owner, and then one day, a couple of criminals walk into his shop and start wreaking havoc. But then once things start to escalate, he quickly takes them out, killing them both. The incident makes the news and he's seen as kind of like a local hero, but then this strange man comes up, played by Ed Harris, who believes that he is somebody else and wants to uncover his past. So it's like an action thriller film about a man with a mysterious past, and as you watch, you're trying to uncover how much of it is true, who he really is, and you see the repercussions that the secrets have on his family. It's just one of those movies that you just gotta watch because I don't want to spoil anything, and also it's not really that long of a film. It's like a little over an hour and a half. So History of Violence, go ahead and check it out. But I'm gonna do some honorable mentions right now. These are movies that like people pretty much already know are comic book movies, but I at least wanted to mention them because they are really good. You know, stuff like V for Vendetta, The Crow, the Hellboy movies, 300, Kick-Ass, Sin City. All of these are really great, but I'm pretty certain most people know that these are based on comic books or graphic novels. Yeah, the section was a little long, but I just want to talk about these movies very briefly to basically highlight the fact that so much can be done within the comic book medium. So let's go ahead and wrap up this video. The point of making this video is just showing that when it comes to comic book movies, so many of them have been lacking, and there's so much more that can be done in the world of comics. And I don't think it's crazy to expect higher quality from the medium. There's a wide variety of stories that can be told and adapted, but for years now they really haven't been concerned about that and just been shoveling out the same crap. This isn't really like a back in my day type of video, because trust me, I remember when it was rare to get a decent comic book or superhero movie. This is more so just a video saying, damn, a lot of these movies suck now, and here are several others that you wouldn't think are comic book movies but are. So there's still a lot more that can be done within the medium. So again, I don't think it's unfair to demand just a little bit more from these movies. Hell, we've seen them do it in the past, and definitely outside of the big two, but also within the big two. I know some people will say that it's because our expectations have lowered over the years, which is true, but judging from the recent receptions these movies and shows are receiving, it's clear that people are getting fed up. And it's really more so a content issue. Nothing really wrong with the medium itself. I mean, look at the hype and interest around Joker 2, or The Batman, or how well received Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was, or how hyped people are for Deadpool 3. There's clearly still interest, and with how big and popular comic book related media has gotten in the past 10 to 15 years, there's really no excuse to not branch out and mix it up a bit. Really focus on the quality, not the quantity. Look, I spent most of my life consuming this stuff from animated to live action, so I know it can be good. Until that happens, I'm staying away from it like I've been doing for the past year. It really needs to innovate and take some serious strides forward. You know, put forth some real effort. Until then, I'm just gonna keep reading manga instead.
Hey, you wanted this, right? You wanted the real deal? That's what this is. Wake up, you're in the middle of it. You want to run? Go ahead. No one's stopping you. Stop complaining.